One of my absolute favorite stories is The Journey Home. It's just such a beautiful genre, and it's so wide. I've just always loved homecoming stories and held them extremely close to my heart. In truth, this is also one of the most foundational stories that human beings have ever told. When we look at classic works of literature going all the way back to the Odyssey as an example, which is extremely popular right now given Christopher Nolan's new film, and one that I just recently reread in kind of preparation for making this video, it's a story that we have told and retold all throughout our long history of being storytellers. And as one of that foundational core stories that we have, sometimes it's told in the epic, sometimes it's told in a very small way. Sometimes it's a external journey and sometimes it's more internal. It's traveling different countries to go home or traveling the complexities of the human mind and existential angst, whatever that might be, in order to find your way back as well. But again and again, literature is always returning to these same questions. What is home is one big one. Why do we leave home in the first place? What are we looking for that causes us to have to leave home? And after everything we experience, can we ever truly return back home afterwards? So, as I mentioned earlier, Nolan's film The Odyssey really brought this to the forefront, the conversation of culture right now. And I just finished rereading Homer's epic, and I'm very much planning to see his film soon. I haven't had the chance to yet, but that is one of the greatest stories. And unsurprisingly, it is going to be our first pick of today's list of 7 stories that tell about the journey home. So, number 1, The Odyssey. Nolan's film came out on July 17th, and The Odyssey came out 3,000 years ago, somewhere thereabouts, maybe a little less. But the Odyssey has really proven to be one of the staples, one of the most foundational homecoming stories in all of Western literature. After 10 years at Troy, Odysseus has to spend another 10 years traveling and trying to get home to his wife and his son and his kingdom in Ithaca. But he encounters monsters, he encounters temptresses, he encounters shipwrecks and witches and cyclopses and everything that we know, all these great stories. Dread is in every island that he is shipwrecked upon. There's always some reason why he's not able to get home. He's repeatedly offered reasons to stay elsewhere. Calypso offers him immortality as an example, but Odysseus, he wants to get home, even though all of these temptations or challenges or obstacles or whatever are keeping him from getting there. And I think that's what makes this story so enduring and so quintessentially human, is that we are always trying to get home, but we're always stopped by these monsters and these challenges and these temptations as well to stay far away from where we are. And eternal life, as one of the examples of what Odysseus is offered, might be a little bit bigger than what we are offered typically in our lives, but we are also facing these similar challenges. But returning is not merely about him arriving home. His household has also been invaded by foreigners, by suitors for his wife Penelope. And ultimately, when he returns home, he must fight for his belongings at the end of it. So this is one of those stories that has led to so many other great adventure stories, from the Aeneid to Ulysses later on. Ulysses is much more internal, right? It's about a man who's wandering the streets of Dublin over the course of one day, but it feels just as much like an epic as you feel when you're reading the Aeneid or when you're reading Odysseus' story, which is what makes this trend of homecoming so important. The second book on this list is The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. This is one of my personal favorites. As a child, I read this many times, and of course, there's a wonderful film version as well. There's no place like home, as it famously says. And The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, I think, really teaches us that Dorothy is trying to escape the narrowness of her own life, her own ordinary life, and she wants to go into this foreign land. But when she's there, she realizes she really does love her home. And specifically when she's unable to get back to her home, that's when she misses it the most. Dorothy's desire to return home to her ordinary life after being carried away to Oz really, I think, highlights something that we all experience. That we want to go on these adventures, we want to grow, we want to challenge ourselves, but then as we're in that journey, as we're challenging ourselves, sometimes we realize we've left really important parts of ourselves behind. In the case of Dorothy, she has to meet characters. The Scarecrow, the Tin Woodman, and the Cowardly Lion are like obviously the 3 most important ones. And all of the lacks that they have, all of the insufficiencies that they have and personal failings, she has to help them to rise above that. They think that going to the wizard is going to help them do that, but really it's a story about them finding their own weaknesses and turning those weaknesses into strengths, which is a theme that I also love a lot. I mentioned this theme earlier on A Wrinkle in Time in a recent video, and I just think it's a wonderful theme. But back to the video, obviously, here. Oz is wonderful. It's a great world. It's a lot of fun, and obviously Kansas is contrasted by being sort of gray and ordinary. Specifically, this contrast is very strong in the film because Kansas is actually in black and white and Oz is in color. But the story really shows that even as vivid as Oz is, there is no place like home. And as a great lover of musicals, I must say that the classic film is absolutely essential viewing as well, and it continues to be for our generation and will for many generations to come. Number 3 on this list is Siddhartha. Siddhartha is a great book by Hermann Hesse about the home that we can find in our own minds when we really expand our thinking, when we move beyond the physical geography of where we are and where we're going and where we've been, and realize that we have to go on this Odyssean journey as well in a more internal sense. Siddhartha really leaves his family and he moves in order to experience everything in life. He inherited what he inherited, right? But he wants to experience the heights of being a king and the depths of aestheticism, right? Getting rid of everything and not having, basically living a very, very frugal life. Sensual pleasure, romantic love, and wealth, but also the despair of having absolutely nothing. And he tries everything. He goes everywhere. He hopes that someone is going to possess this answer that he's looking for, the meaning, the search. Like, those are the kind of questions he's asking. But the real insight, the real genius of Siddhartha, obviously based on the Buddhist tradition as well, is that wisdom is not something that can just be given to you. You have to live it. You have to go on your journey. You have to leave home and experience and travel around in order so that you can come home. And in the case of Siddhartha, his eventual home is not the city or the place that he ends up. It's the inner reconciliation or the inner enlightenment or the arrival at nirvana, however you want to think of it. His ability to really unite his experiences and all these things that seem to be contradictions, to bring them together and recognize that they're not so contradictory after all. They're really are pieces of the same puzzle. And if he can put those pieces together, he's going to be able to have a beautiful and meaningful life. And I think this is what makes Siddhartha such an important addition on this particular list, because sometimes our restlessness, our internal restlessness to experience and to travel and to try, it gets lost that we also have this mental journey that we're going on as well. And it's not only the physical place that we are. So Siddhartha is an important element to this. Absolutely as well. Sometimes that journey is not to a physical place, but to a place inside of ourselves. And I think that's beautiful. Now, number 4 on this list is The Great Gatsby. Now, a lot of you are going to be wondering, why would I put The Great Gatsby on a list about journeying home? That makes absolutely no sense. Maybe you don't like The Great Gatsby. Maybe you think it's overwritten, as more than one people has told me before. But the reason that this is on this list is because Gatsby, I think, is the quintessential story about searching for a home that no longer exists. I think that's what makes this story so timeless and so wonderful. The hinge of this entire story is that Gatsby is trying to build this future. He's trying to have the mansion and all of the glitz and glamour in his life, everything he wants, and he's just missing one thing, right? He's just missing this girl that he likes. He's missing Daisy. But really, everything he's building is based on a green light in the distance, which represents the past, something that no longer is in his wheelhouse, he no longer has access to, and he's trying to grasp that thing, which cannot be grasped because it's not a physical place. It's also a time and a person. And he's not really trying to win Daisy as she presently exists, right? I mean, Daisy is just, the whole novel shows her with all these flaws. She's not this person that Gatsby should be wanting. This doesn't make any sense. But he's trying to return to his past. He's trying to return to his first love, to a version of himself that was innocent and he feels more honest. And because of that inability to access that version of himself in the past, he feels cut off. He feels stuck in the future. He feels limited. And his dream, the dream of Gatsby, is really a form of homecoming, right? He's not trying to get to a specific place so much as to that time, to that feeling, to that sensation. And Nick really warns us, I think, all throughout in his writing. He's the narrator of the story. He's a quintessential, unreliable narrator, of course. But his narration really reminds us that Gatsby's tragedy is that refusal to accept that time has changed, that Daisy has changed, that everything that once was can no longer be in the same way, and that he's going to have to build a new home, a new future, if he wants to find meaning, right? Gatsby's never going to come at that total arrival of coming home in the way that he wants to. And I think this is one of the big challenges that we all face in our lives. Sometimes we're grasping at things in the past and we realize eventually, hopefully, that it's not just the physical space, it's also the time, it's also the people. So Gatsby, I think Great Gatsby really understands that the painful element of homecoming is that it's not just the home that we're going back to, or it's the time, it's the place, it's all these things that have to come together. Number 5 on this list is The Lord of the Rings. This is one of my favorite novels of all time. I've obviously spoken about it before, but really I think at its core, The Lord of the Rings is a homecoming story. It's a story about Frodo and Sam and the hobbits going on this adventure in order to come home to Hobbiton, in order to live their life. Now, all of them pretty much would like to Merry and Pippin want a little bit of adventure, but realistically, they want to live in Hobbiton. They want their life. They want, especially Sam, who's really the moral core of the story. He wants to live a simple life in Hobbiton. But circumstance does not allow him to do that. If he wants to have the home that he loves, he's going to have to go out to transverse the entire world in order to fight for it. And then he's going to be able to come home and live in that world. But he might die in the journey. He might not make it. And Lord of the Rings is really about all the risks that we have to take in order to fight, all the wars we have to go to in order to protect the thing that we love, which is really home. And obviously, Tolkien's experiences fighting in the First World War, the Great War, absolutely informed this. And that journey that he had to have of going out, fighting the world so that he could protect the home that he loved. But then seeing that home that he loved also change through industrialization and history. And that was a challenge for him. And so retreating, or we could argue maybe not retreating, but going into Middle Earth in order to show what it could be like if we would be able to fight against that. Because the Shire is the entire quest, it's the entire meaning, it's the entire purpose about this. How far are these characters willing to go in order to protect their home? Well, in the case of Lord of the Rings, they'll go all the way. And ultimately, in the last chapter of the book, The Scouring of the Shire, or it's the end of the book, this isn't depicted in the film version, which is an excellent film version as well, by the way. It's one of the great trilogies of all time, but it misses a lot, first of all, by not having Tom Bombadil in. That was a big mistake. But secondly, by not having the scouring of the Shire, because this really makes all the pieces fit together in showing that this is a homecoming journey. And that the home that they're returning to is not the perfect home that they left, and there's challenges now, and they're going to have to do their best in order to try to regain what they can and retain what they can and rebuild what was broken. And the Shire can be rebuilt, but Frodo himself might not be able to rebuild it with them. And that is the tragedy and the beauty of Lord of the Rings. I think one of Tolkien's most poignant insights is sometimes we can restore home, but we might not be able to be restored ourselves. Sometimes people have to sacrifice their own experience of home, their own life, in order for everyone else to have that experience of home. And it's enough to make you tear up, and I do every single time I finish reading Lord of the Rings, I can assure you. Number 6 on this list is one that I just finished reading with my book club online, and if you would like to join and read with us every month, we read one children's book and one adult's book. Right now we're reading Life and Fate by Vasily Grossman, just finishing that up, and The Phantom Tollbooth. But last month we read Watership Down, and I think Watership Down is a wonderful homecoming story in its own way, but it's not about coming back home, it's about going to a new home. Because in Watership Down, it starts with home being destroyed. So what happens when home is destroyed? What happens when you have a premonition that your home is going to be destroyed? In the case of Watership Down, Fiver is this character with almost prophetic insights, and he warns his fellow rabbits that the Warren is doomed. It's going to be destroyed, and you're going to have to go away, or we're going to be destroyed with it. So unlike Odysseus, there isn't a story that they can just go home. They can't just return back. Unlike Lord of the Rings, even though the Shire was changed, they still can't go back because it's completely gone. What they have to do is build a new home. And so this journey is really about not recovering a past that was lost, but recovering elements of ourselves and their experiences and the things that were beautiful about their old life, and then combining those with wisdom and experience to build a better home somewhere else. So rabbits carry aspects of their home, the stories, which are all kind of interspersed throughout, which is, I think, a really wonderful element of Watership Down. You get all these stories all throughout the story. and transformation. Hazel is one of the characters who is Fiver's brother, has to become the leader that he wouldn't naturally be. He's not the biggest rabbit, but he's the one who brings all these qualities together. And so this group, they build a new home, welcoming outsiders, creating something new. And I think this really offers an answer that we couldn't find with Gatsby, right? With Gatsby, we can't always return home to the home that existed before. And Gatsby understood, the Great Gatsby really gets that. It really understands that, and it shows us that. Even I think Fitzgerald understands that. I'm not sure if he really understands what Adams taught us in Watership Down, is that we can carry the beautiful elements of our past and build a new future, a new home around them. Home is not just the thing we inherit, it's also something we build together. And the seventh and final book on this list that I have to talk about regarding homecoming is the Hebrew Bible. I think this is a really interesting, maybe a bit of an outlier. People might be saying, well, wow, the Hebrew Bible, that doesn't seem like a homecoming journey. If anything, that seems like a journey where you have a home and then you just lose it. But the truth is, the home that we orient our lives towards is the story of the Hebrew Bible. Basically, the Bible contains the broadest of all homecoming stories. You have multiple sequences of homecoming in the stories of Genesis and Exodus, and then later on throughout the Bible as well. The Israelites are exiled and then they return, and then they're exiled again and then they return. And this happens at the individual level with Adam and Eve, then it happens at the familial level with Abraham and his descendants, then it happens at the nation level with Moses and the whole civilization. But again and again, the people have to leave and wander and become exiles and then return and rebuild, right? Abraham leaves his own birthplace that for land he's never seen. And Jacob leaves home, but then he comes back. And then Joseph, in Egypt, he never really comes back, but his descendants eventually come back. So you have this constant through line of coming home. And this is not just in the case of the early books of the Bible, it's all throughout. Home is not just that one story, it's that thing we orient our lives towards, right? And that pattern continues and continues and continues. But if we want to restore home, it's not enough to just long for it. You have to orient your lives towards it. You have to build it. You have to preserve its memory for thousands of years, potentially, in the case of the Israelites, right? You have to prepare yourself again and again for the possibility of restoration, even if you might never personally see that journey completed. You might just be one link in that chain. And so that story, I think, is one of the reasons why the Hebrew Bible is one of the great homecoming stories. Now, obviously, there's a lot of complexities to how exactly this story plays out in the other end, like after the book, because the book kind of leaves us, it's not really one book, the library, we should call it, leaves us with in the middle of the story, and we need to know what's going to continue on. But that constant return and exile and return reminds us that sometimes in our lives we are just on a part, an up or a down of the story, and maybe the homeward journey is not just our lives, but it's a multiple generation story. Now, there are so many other contenders for this list that I should have included. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe comes to mind. I think that's a great homecoming journey. The Count of Monte Cristo, of course. The Moral Homecoming, so much to be said about that, but I've spoken about it so much that I thought, okay, I have to hold off from mentioning that one. The Divine Comedy is another great one for homecoming. And then, of course, all the descendants of the Odyssey that I mentioned earlier, like the Aeneid or Ulysses or whatnot. But ultimately, I think that homecoming stories they're so wonderful and they're so important because in one way or the other, we're always trying to return home. I think if I can just sum this up in one simple way, I would just say home is not merely a place, it's a time, it's a particular people with voices and familiar experiences and rituals and versions of ourselves that existed alongside those, but time passes and people pass away and we change, and home must necessarily change with us. So in a sense, Gatsby was right. We can't simply repeat the past. We have to return, we're trying to return to this vanished moment, and it's not there. So Fitzgerald was kind of onto something when he wrote The Great Gatsby, but that doesn't have to mean that home is lost forever. I think Watership Down shows us that we can build new homes, and Lord of the Rings shows us that damaged homes can be rebuilt, even if we, return from the struggle damaged as well. Siddhartha shows us that we can find home within ourselves. In the Hebrew Bible, that restoration is possible, but it requires more than longing. We have to believe in its possibility, orient our lives towards it, even if that journey takes generations. So maybe the great homecoming stories endure because they tell us both about the life that we need to live, and they also tell us that even though we can't return precisely to where we were before, we must never stop seeking and trying to build and return home. So there you have it, 7 of literature's greatest homecoming journeys. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As you can tell, I'm in a different location than normal, so I'm actually home right now for a couple of weeks, and I thought this was an appropriate video. I'll definitely try to be watching the Odyssey very soon here, and then I'll share my thoughts on that. But I thought this was an interesting topic. Let me know what you guys think. If you found this interesting, please do leave a comment about what your favorite homecoming journeys were and which stories remind you of home. This could be just ones that you loved in your childhood, or ones that you come back to, or ones that remind you of that journeying home process in particular. I'd love to hear from you guys, and I will see you in the next one. So let me know. Happy reading. Until next time, God bless.